We got time for a little recap, Pat. If you want to join us for some NFL as well, and then do picks. I know we're not going to
absolutely.
We're not going to do any fantasy tonight, so we can kind of use some of that time. But so let's jump into like I said, our usual NFL recap. I've got the games pulled up here. Maybe just start from the top. San Francisco losing to Atlanta by 2 touchdowns. What do you guys make of that?
I think there's a two-way street for that for me. One, I think Atlanta is not as bad as people are making them out to be, because I've been saying that actually for 2 weeks now. They keep keeping it close against good teams, and they've come close to almost beating the Rams, and now they just beat San Francisco by two scores. Clearly they got something going with their new head coaching and that Mariota-led offense. It's fun to watch. And the flip side of that is this is the 49ers to a T, man. Like, they're like, they'll go beat a good team, and then they'll go lose to a bad team. That's kind of been their MO for years now. And they seem to make noise when they make the playoffs, but for the regular season, I'm not surprised. I'm actually not surprised.
You know, I agree with that. I think that on a personal level, they absolutely destroyed my parlay last week. But I do see the Falcons as a team that have some pieces in place, some exciting young core. They're the only team in the NFL that has not lost against their spreads. And so that was, you know, hard to stomach this week. But I think the reality is I do think they're bad. I think they're holding it close. This league is very competitive, as we've seen that we've got more one-score games than ever before, and it's led to some really thrilling endings, some heartbreaking losses. You know who's also 3-3? The Baltimore Ravens. I don't think any of us would take the Falcons over the Ravens in any game. So I think, you know, it is a long season. We've got 10 more games to go. I don't see this being anything competitive for them, and I don't see this being anything more than a blip on the radar for the Niners. I think they're well coached. I think they have great schemes. They're incredibly defensive, an incredible defensive team, and have proven to be typically fairly efficient offensively. If Jimmy can hold on to the ball a little bit better, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah. And I will say I support Pat in saying that this isn't me saying the Falcons are good or they're going to make the playoffs. It's just me saying that they clearly have young pieces that they should be excited about long term. And, you know, it's interesting. I wonder if they'll start to question if they should give Mariota a chance going forward, assuming they can build around him a little more, because he is definitely playing well enough to kind of keep him in the loop. That's all I was saying. But I agree with you, Pat. Av, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. The Niners were really beat up going into this game. Like, their main pieces were there, but they were like a ton of their depth and their other starters were out. So it was kind of a tough game for them. Plus, as I said, they're always so inconsistent. So I don't have too much. I think it's more about the Niners just not showing up. But the other thing, it is super hard to go on the road. I don't care where you're going, especially Atlanta, which is a really tough environment. It's so hard to go on the road and win in the NFL, which cues up the next game. Are the New York Jets back? They went into Lambeau and beat Aaron Rodgers by 17 points. Did it a lot with special teams, which the fact that the Packers, you know, didn't make the Super Bowl last year because of special teams, and they didn't address it clearly because I think there were 2 blocked punts in this game, and they lost to the Jets, man. Woo! What you guys got on that one?
Dude, the Packers didn't address anything. They went and made their team worse. What do you mean they didn't address special teams? They addressed absolutely nothing. They traded away Davante Adams, knowing Aaron Rodgers was going to re-sign, who I wish he never did. I wish he demanded that trade and got out of there. Because all the Packers exist to do is make that man's life more difficult, right? That's the way I look at that organization. Today I saw a report saying that the Packers are looking to acquire a wide receiver to help Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, wow, it took you till now? You mean we drafted Jordan Love in the first round a couple years ago? You didn't think you could take a receiver? You mean when Jordy Nelson left and you had Davante Adams, you didn't think you could add one more receiver? You mean after you traded Davante Adams, your solution was what? Bring back Randall Cobb, who's like 80 years old, and roll with Alan Lazard? Like, I mean, the Packers have never done anything to make me think any differently about them supporting Rodgers. The thing is, though, I have such a belief in the GOAT abilities of Aaron Rodgers that he keeps them in it, even when – I'll put it this way. If Aaron Rodgers wasn't on the Packers, we would talk about the Packers as one of the worst teams in the NFL because they have a good run game, but they don't have any good receivers, and their defense is good, not great. So when you look at it that way, Rodgers is the only reason that they've even been relevant in some of these games, and I'm not surprised they lost to the Jets. Now, am I surprised they lost by multiple scores at home against the Jets? Yes, I think that's actually super embarrassing, and no wonder there's a report that came out about them wanting to add talent because I feel for Rodgers, man. I can't put it on him because it's one of those situations where it's like his run game is doing nothing for him and his pass catchers are doing nothing for him, and he's just struggling week in and week out. Flip side to that is the Jets deserve a ton of credit. I think their future is bright. I'm a Zach Wilson truther, and they got Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson. I mean, that is youth on a level that you can't compare a lot of teams to, so I believe that they have a really bright future. Do I think they're going to be a playoff team and make more noise this year? No, but winning 3 in a row, super impressive, and I want to give a quick shout-out to that kid who said his dad would buy him ice cream every week the Jets won. I don't know if you guys saw that, and everybody was flaming.
Sound investment.
They're like, it's a great way not to buy your kid ice cream, and now it's 3 weeks in a row, so hope that kid's getting plenty of ice cream. Shout-out to that. So, yep.
I think the only part of the Jets' future I'm a little worried about is Zach Wilson, to be honest with you, which is saying something.
I agree.
The defense is loaded. I mean, you got Sauce back there, man. The offensive weapons, Garrett, Elijah, Breece, like Side mentioned, man. But I'm still not sold on Zach. I think he's a little more pop than circumstance, shall we say. But I like Zach personally, though.
He's more mom than pop, but...
That we're not cutting. That is staying on. Attaboy, Patty. I love that. This is what we forgot to mention. Patty should have had a side career as a stand-up comedian for anyone that doesn't know him. So, if anything, I probably had to. I didn't have that conversation of needing to censor prior to the show. So I got to give him props. He's been keeping himself in check for the most part.
We're explicit on all platforms, so you can say whatever you want, barring the joke you made earlier, which will be cut.
Wonderful.
We leave the audience wondering what you might have joked about. I love it.
Exactly. No, I think this game says more about the Packers than it does the Jets. I think they're exciting. I think both these teams missed the playoffs. I think they, like you've already touched on, refusing to get one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen any help doesn't do anybody any good. And they look shaky at best. They're 3-3 and have not played any quote-unquote good teams. You know, I mean, this is what you get, right? And so I think this is LaFleur's, trial by fire. What is he going to do with this? They've played the Vikings, Bears, Bucks, and wound up going 2-1 in those games. I mean, that's just, it's not going to get the job done. And none of these games have looked particularly impressive except for the Bears, which we all knew was going to happen. So to come out and lose twice in a row to teams from New York, which were considered to be amateur, I don't think it. I think if anything, the Giants was actually a more resounding loss for them than the Jets. Even though the score doesn't show it, I think the Giants are for real, and I think the Jets are young and exciting. So
yeah,
it's a good game to pivot to. I was going to say, I mean, when are we going to start believing in the Giants? I mean, beating Baltimore at home. Baltimore, I think it's a really good team, but you're supposed to win your home games. But holding Lamar in check, couple interceptions down the stretch, man. Daniel Jones is playing better. Saquon's the truth.
I like that you guys brought that one up. I do want to say real quick before we move on, just because Pat alluded to this, I do believe the Packers will still make the playoffs, and I do believe they'll figure it out just because I trust Rodgers that much that if they can actually get him some sort of a piece in trade acquisitions, their defense is good enough, and I think their run game will figure it out. I just think they're going to be more of a second-half team. But I do think that's a good game to point to because at this point, how can you doubt the Giants? They've beaten everyone except for one team, and they're doing it in convincing ways where they're showing that when they need a big play, their defense steps up, and when they need a big play on offense, even with Jones being kind of mediocre at times, Saquon being as much of a stud as he is. And the other thing people are forgetting, their offense is pretty banged up, at least in the receiver front, and they're still managing to go out there and win. And I think I give a lot of credit to Saquon and also to their coaching. I mean, coaching clearly has made a massive difference for that team. So shout out to the Giants, man. They just continue to roll. And the other thing is I want to say the Ravens, man, they got some things I need to figure out. I've been saying it for weeks. It's like them blowing leads the way that they have, and then them kind of choking at the end there, the big fumble, letting up the touchdown, all that. I think the Ravens, they got a lot of stuff to work on before they're true competitors again in the AFC.
It is. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, the one thing the Giants are doing, that there's so many teams in the NFL, like Simon mentioned, that blow leads late. The one thing the Giants are doing is they're doing the opposite. They're stealing games late, because a lot of these wins, they've been outplayed most of the game. I mean, Tennessee, Baltimore, Green Bay, and then they just come back and take it at the end. So I don't know if that's what that says about the Giants, but like, they're just stealing the games that other teams are throwing away.
Yeah. Giants were down 10 at the half to the Pack, and by the way, didn't throw a touchdown the whole game, right? So the ability to continue to pound the rock 30 times a game against a defense that's probably getting tired, I mean, that shows grit. And I think that's what's going to matter, is if they can continue those running schemes, then they're going to be fine. If you ask Daniel Jones to be a facilitator and have a 65 to 70% completion percentage, and he's throwing dinks and dumps down the field and occasionally going deep, they're going to be fine. You don't have to ask him to be Superman.
Yeah, this kind of has semblances of the New York Giants back from the Eli Manning era, when they were able to, get into the playoffs and then make a run. Their defense, obviously, their defensive line is nowhere near the level that it was back then, but they have a terrific defense and the ability to pound the rock. Problem is, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be Eli Manning in the playoffs. So we'll hold off on the playoffs for a little while. I do want to mention another team in the NFC that has been on the struggle bus, as we discussed the Packers. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Mr. Tom Brady going off on his offensive lineman on the side. It does not look good in Tampa Bay right now. Dare I say, in a division where we thought it was going to be easy for them, they're going to be fighting right now. They're going to have to fight for the playoffs. Like, that's a crazy, crazy thought to think about, given the fact that the Saints have been as beat up as they have been with their quarterback situation and guys like Kamara and Thomas out, and the Falcons being the Falcons. I mean, and obviously I'm not even going to bring up Carolina, but we don't even talk about them. But it's kind of wild to see how much the Bucs are struggling right now.
Yeah. Carolina's not worth the breath. Since they're technically tied for the division with Atlanta, I would think that's a great value pick if you can look to potential division champ winners. I still think that they win this division, and it's not even going to be close. They're going to figure it out. There's too much talent. There's too much good coaching. I just don't see New Orleans putting it together. I don't see Atlanta playing up to this level consistently the rest of the way. And I like Mariota. I do. But I just think that this is Tom's division to lose. And once they start playing teams in their own division consistently, I think they're really going to make notice of that too.
Yeah, the Bucs do look terrible, similar to the Packers. They're in that same boat. But I agree with Pat. Like, I just don't see any of those teams being able to challenge them when it's all said and done. They're like, still with so much talent. I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll probably sneak in as the worst of the four division winners and maybe get knocked out in the first round. But like, from a winning the division standpoint, like, I just don't see New Orleans having it this year to be able to compete with them.
Yeah. I want to clarify, that wasn't me saying the Bucs were going to lose the division. That was just me saying that they're actually having to fight. That was me saying they actually have to fight right now to keep the lead in a division where people, myself included, thought that even if they weren't as good as they were the last couple of years, that they would clearly win. So I just wanted to bring that up. The other thing I want to point to is, if it wasn't for the top three teams in the NFC East, the NFC would be a joke of a conference right now. I mean, the NFC, who would have ever thought the NFC least, as people have called them for years, would be the reason that the NFC is even relevant right now? Because the good old Philadelphia Eagles are now 6-0. The Giants, we just talked about, are 5-1. And the Cowboys, obviously in a tough game for Cooper Rush, but still gave the Phillies a run for their money without Dak Prescott, and are expected to get Dak back this week, which is going to obviously add fuel to the fire. That is three really solid teams in the NFC East. No disrespect to your Commanders. I know they got to win this week, but I think between Carson Wentz getting hurt and just the other three teams, I think we're on the same page about the state of the East. But, wow, we got to talk about the East a little bit, man. These teams are impressive, and specifically Philadelphia going 6-0. First time in a long time. That's pretty impressive.
Best division in football. I think it's kind of hard to argue that right now. And, I mean, like, Dallas, man, I can't believe in Dallas this year. Like, now that they're getting Dak back, like, I would borderline go as far to say that they're the second best team in the conference. Philly, you can't even make an argument Philly's not the best team in the conference right now. I would be tempted to say that Dallas, now that they have Dak back, might even be the second best team in the conference.
There's a lot of truth to that. Phillies looked incredible. I'm so happy to see Jalen Hurts continue his development because we saw his, continued signs of improvement both in college and now at the professional level. So that's really cool to see them surrounded with some weapons and be able to utilize them the way that he is going to succeed. I honestly, as much love as the NFC East is getting, I got to go with the AFC East. I think the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins, who are an ugly 3-3 right now, are missing their quarterback for some personal reasons. But I think they've got a lot of talent around there. New England sneakily won the last 2 games. They're 3-3. So nobody's got a losing record, but at the same time, you got to think who's going to be there at the end of the year? I think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills, right? So will the Eagles continue the success, and what is that going to translate to in the playoffs when somebody's able to really put a difficult scheme on Jalen Hurts and make him become a quarterback, not just a dual athlete? I really think that he's going to have to show what he's made of, and I hope he does, but I think he might struggle.
I actually love that analysis because I think with Tua having gotten hurt and Miami not having been as good the last couple of weeks, I think people tend to forget about the East. And this conversation I had with somebody the other day, if Tua was healthy right now, there's an argument to be made that Miami might have a better record than the Bills because until Tua got hurt, they didn't lose a game. And there's a reason behind that. Their offense is dynamic as can be with their playmakers that they have across the board. Raheem Mostert is proving he can be a solid starting running back, and they got a solid defense. So I love that. And I'm also glad you brought up the Bills because a big point that Evan and I were talking about last week was obviously the massive Bills-Chiefs matchup for the weekend, the revenge game for the Bills. And they, especially with the way they started that game, it wasn't looking good for them. But they became the clutch team this time around, and Mahomes and the Chiefs were not the clutch team this time around, and the Bills came away with the win. I want to get y'all's takeaway from that. And do you guys believe now that the Bills have surpassed the Chiefs as the class of the AFC, and do you believe that if they were to play each other again in the playoffs, the same result would occur, or do you still think the Chiefs would take their lunch money in the playoffs as they have a few times now?
No pun intended, but I think that game literally comes down to a coin flip. I really do. I think they're just 2 incredible teams with a lot of strengths on both sides of the ball, with some playmakers that are absolutely going to make a difference. But I'm taking the Chiefs. I am. I understand they just lost to them. I think that's going to do little to shatter Patrick's confidence behind there. He's going to be a special player for many, many years to come, and I think this is the year that he continues that dominance.
Yeah, so I think this game for me was about determining who is the better team right now, which is clearly the Bills now. And otherwise, I don't think this game means a whole lot, but what it does mean is that now, for the first time, these teams have played so much the last few years, but every single time it's an Arrowhead. And I feel like for the first time, now that the Bills won this game, it's going to be in Orchard Park. I think that's the difference. I don't think you can say that the Bills are the class of the East or the AFC until they actually beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. But I think now that the game will actually be in Orchard Park, it'll favor them. And again, I pick them to do it every year, so I'm going to pick them again. But not because they won this game, but because winning this game should allow them to be home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and that's going to be huge.
If they can hold on to that lead, I agree too, because the thing is, though, there's still a lot of season left to be played, and this was a massive matchup in the early season. We don't know what their final records are going to be, and if the Chiefs obviously surpass them in the sense of wins, then it could still be an Arrowhead. Flip side to that is watching the Chiefs go play in Buffalo in the winter during a playoff game. That is a tough climate for Pat Mahomes and company to go into, especially without Tyreek Hill and them relying so heavily on guys like Travis Kelce. Not that the other guys aren't making plays, but when you think about it, in prior years they had the twosome of Hill and Kelce for Mahomes to throw the ball to. It's going to make it a lot more difficult if it's in Bill Stadium. Ev knows my take, though. I am ride or die with the Chiefs just because why wouldn't I be? Every year they give me a reason to believe in them, and I still believe, even after the regular season loss, until I see the Bills make noise in the playoffs, I'm always going to ride with the Chiefs until I see it happen. So prove it to me, and I'll change my mind. But for now, I'm still riding with the Chiefs. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. And honestly, in grand scheme of things, that lived up to the hype. I'm actually kind of pissed it was a 4:00 game. I really wish we got a night game out of that one, because that would have been super fun for that to be the only game on without the distractions of other games going on. And I did want to say real quick, shout out to our parlay this week, Ev. We finally hit a parlay. Big week. Shout out to my boy Alec Pierce with a game-winning touchdown to cover. That was massive. We needed a touchdown. If we hit a field goal, we wouldn't have covered that game. It would have been even, I think. So
we would have pushed
crazy.
the parlay, which would have been miserable. Imagine.
That would have been awful. And the flip side of that is also that we finally beat the Jaguars, guys. The Colts beat the Jaguars. I haven't gotten to say that in like a decade. It feels like I could say we beat the Chiefs. I could say we beat the Bills, but I'm more proud to say we beat the Jaguars. So I'm gonna go into this week excited about that.
You guys typically beat them at home. I feel like it's the road game at Duval that is the bugaboo for you guys. I feel like you usually beat them at home though. But you mentioned the parlay. I wanted to mention the Bengals quick if we're going to gloss over the rest of the games, which I think is fair. Big win for the Bengals. The Saints, again, we don't think they're anything special, but Superdome is a hard place to play. Jamar Chase also came in clutch from a parlay perspective when all they needed was a field goal, but he decided to house it. So I'm here for it. Good win for the Bengals.
You shout out to Bengals for sure.
Big Joey B fan. Guy's got ice in his veins. They're going to be just fine.
Joe Shiesty.
Your Florida fans say they're a Joey B fan. Clearly points to how good he must be with the hate those programs have for each other. Also, one other thing. Real quick, it's not NFL, but we're going to get into our picks anyway. We got to talk about Tennessee and Bama for just a second. What a game, guys. What a game. I remember I saw it and I thought, okay, Bama's down multiple scores. Clearly Bryce Young, with him being hurt, this looks like it's Tennessee's game. And then I left to go to the mall or something, and I walk around a corner, and it's like 48-48. I'm like, what happened? That game was insane. I want to shout out, as much as I'm not a fan of Tennessee being good as an SEC East, one of our SEC East rivals, I got to give them a huge shout out. They clearly are. I cannot wait to see that Tennessee-Georgia game is basically where this leaves me, because that was an impressive win, even with Bryce Young being hurt. Anytime you beat Bama for the first time since 2006, it calls for you to tear your goalpost down and go throw it in the water. So I just wanted to get a quick reaction from you.
I was just so shook watching them take that thing down, walk it through town, and then go dump it in the river, man. That was amazing. Shout out them. Incredible game. Huge win.
Just I was hoping they could more.
I was hoping they could pull it off, but they're going to pay a hefty fine for storming the field, and man, it was so worth it, man. I was glad to see them pull it off.
Yeah, they also raised the GoFundMe account or crowdfunding for the replacement of the pole and the fine. So at least they're if nothing else at all, the Tennessee fans are accountable. We'll give them credit for that.
I love it. Shout out Henry Hooker.
With that being said, yeah, Hooker, I was given some crap earlier for that, but he is something special. With that